Early 20th century engineers believed steam ruled the Alps. That belief lasted until the mountain nearly broke them. Freight stalled, tunnels suffocated workers, and Switzerland faced a crisis only innovation could solve. But could a radical electric locomotive, awkwardly long and impossibly powerful, overthrow steam's grip and forever change mountain railways? This story begins inside smoke-choked tunnels, where the need for a new kind of machine could no longer be ignored. Stay with us and subscribe for more stories where technology meets human endurance. Inside the Gotthard tunnels, the air turned thick and bitter. Every passing train left behind a choking haze, swirling through the darkness long after the last car disappeared. For engine crews and tunnel workers, each shift meant hours breathing coal smoke and soot, eyes stinging, lungs burning. The roar of a steam locomotive was only part of the ordeal. The real weight pressed down in silence, heat radiating from the boiler, sweat pooling beneath heavy coats, the taste of ash settling on tongues. Even a short stop inside the mountain could mean headaches or dizziness, and men learned to recognize the warning signs of suffocation before they lost their grip on the shovel or the brake. Water and coal vanished at a staggering rate. On steep inclines, a heavy freight engine could burn through several tons of coal and thousands of liters of water in a single climb. Every trip demanded careful planning: where to refill, how to ration, what to do if a tender ran dry between stations. There was no room for error. A stalled train in the tunnel meant more than a delay. It risked lives. Maintenance crews, too, faced the same air, crawling alongside hot pipes and dripping walls, their faces blackened before the shift was half over. The mountain exacted a price from everyone who worked inside it. By the end of a long day, hands shook from fatigue and clothes carried the sharp, sour scent of coal long after workers stepped back into daylight. The need for relief for a cleaner and safer way through the Alps pressed harder with every passing season. Coal trains arrived from Germany less often as the war dragged on. By 1917, Switzerland's reserves dwindled, and the price of each ton rose sharply. The country's railways, still dependent on imported coal, faced rationing and unpredictable shortages. Steam locomotives sat cold in their sheds, waiting for shipments that sometimes never came. Schedules slipped and freight piled up at sidings. For the Swiss Federal Railways, the crisis was not a distant threat, but a daily reality, one that threatened the entire north-south artery through the Alps. In boardrooms and government offices, attention turned to the country's own resources. Switzerland's rivers and lakes had already powered factories and towns. Engineers and political leaders agreed if the railways could switch from coal to electricity, the mountains themselves could supply the energy. Hydroelectric plants, some already built for industry, could be harnessed for the national rail network. The Gotthard route, with its steep grades and long tunnels, would become the proving ground. The governing board of the Swiss Federal Railways made its decision in 1913, but the coal crisis made it urgent. In 1918, the order was placed for a new class of electric locomotives, machines designed specifically for the demands of the Gotthard. These would be the first in the country built for heavy freight, not adapted from smaller passenger engines. The plan called for a locomotive able to pull 860 tons over the pass, using power from Swiss hydroelectric plants rather than foreign coal. Within a few years, the first units would be delivered, and the era of steam on the Gotthard would begin to close. The need for energy independence and reliable transport had forced a bold step, one that would change the face of Swiss railways for generations. The first CE682 locomotives rolled out of the SLM workshops in Winterthur, with a silhouette unlike anything else on Swiss rails. Two long, narrow noses stretched ahead and behind a raised central cab, giving the machine an unmistakable, almost reptilian profile. Each end rode on its own three-axle frame, connected to the cab section by heavy pivots and joints. This articulation let the 120-ton locomotive flex as it rounded the sharpest mountain curves, the body seeming to crawl and bend its way through the Alps. It was a practical solution to a difficult problem, housing massive motors and transformers while keeping weight spread evenly across the rails. But it also gave the locomotive a kind of personality. Railway workers and villagers along the Gotthard soon had a name for it: the Crocodile. The details of the design came from careful teamwork. SLM handled the steel frames and running gear, while Brown, Bovary, and C supplied the electric motors and control equipment. In old workshop photos, engineers in white coats stand shoulder to shoulder with machinists, tracing lines on blueprints and checking the fit of new castings. Every joint and rod had to be strong enough for years of mountain service, but flexible enough to keep the locomotive steady on twisting tracks. Early Crocodiles left the factory finished in a deep, sober brown, a color chosen for many of Switzerland's first electric locomotives. Over time, as the fleet grew and the SBB sought a more unified image, green became the standard. The change was gradual. Some units ran for years in brown, others wore both colors in their lifetime. By the time the Crocodile became a fixture of Swiss railway posters and model train sets, green had become part of its identity. Out of the original 33 locomotives built from 1919 to 1922, most spent decades in service, their articulated frames and evolving colors making them instantly recognizable, whether seen from a mountain station platform or remembered in photographs. Electricity changed the rules of mountain railroading. On the Crocodile, the difference began with the motors themselves. Unlike steam engines, where power had to travel through spinning rods and pistons, and each turn was limited by the strength of metal and the grip of the wheels, electric motors delivered their full force the instant the current flowed. From a standstill, the Crocodile's 6 traction motors could push the entire train up a steep grade without hesitation. It was like trading a bicycle's chain and gears for a silent, invisible hand that never tired and never slipped. This advantage showed up in the numbers and in the locomotive's strength. The Crocodile's official rating stood between 2,700 and 2,900 kilowatts at the rail, more than enough to start and haul 860 tons up the Gotthard's hardest climbs. Heavy freight trains, which once crawled at walking pace behind steam, now moved steadily at 35 kilometers per hour, even on the steepest sections. On flatter stretches, the locomotive was authorized for 65 kilometers per hour, quick for a freight engine of its size and era. Crews sometimes pushed to 75, but at that speed, the long, articulated frame began to sway, and caution took over. What mattered most wasn't how fast the Crocodile could go, but how reliably it could keep moving, hour after hour in all weather. Where steam engines lost power and traction as they struggled for breath, the Crocodile applied steady, controlled torque with every turn of the wheel. The result was a new kind of predictability, one that made timetables tighter and mountain operations less uncertain. The electric age had arrived. Not with speed records, but with strength on demand. A Crocodile shift began with small rituals. The driver reached for the thick metal handle, removable by design, and always kept it in his pocket between runs to keep the locomotive silent and safe. Sliding it into the main controller, he checked the air pressure, set the brakes, and then raised the pantograph until it touched the overhead wire. A quick glance at the voltage gauge, a measured turn, and then the step controller clicked through its sequence. Each notch sent power to the motors in steady, deliberate waves. In the cab, the air carried a faint scent of oil and warm metal. The world outside faded as the Crocodile eased forward, its articulated frame flexing around the first curve. Inside a tunnel, the soundscape changed. The hum of transformers, the low mechanical clatter, the driver's breath. For those at the controls, the Crocodile was not just a machine, but a companion, responsive, patient, and demanding careful hands and quiet attention. By the mid-1980s, the Crocodile's long journey in regular service came to its quiet end. Most were withdrawn, their places on the mountain taken by newer, faster machines, yet not every crocodile vanished. In Lucerne, number 14,253 is preserved at the Swiss Museum of Transport, its body at rest, but its story on display. At Erstfeld, 14,276 remains alive, cared for by volunteers who know every bolt and bearing by heart. In 2002, a special run brought an old driver back to the cab, a reunion shaped by memory, the feel of the controller in his hand, and the familiar rhythm as the locomotive rolled under the wires once more. For those who keep these machines running, each journey is a promise. The Crocodile's legacy is not just preserved, but lived and shared between generations. Today, every high-speed train crossing the Alps traces a path first carved by electric pioneers. As climate and energy debates reshape our world, the Crocodile's legacy reminds us real progress demands daring choices. Sometimes, the future is built on tracks no one else dared to lay.